and welcome to the Pragmatic Product Chat series, where we tackle the biggest challenges facing today's product management, product marketing, and other market and data-driven professionals with some of the best minds in the industry. I'm Rebecca Calageras for Pragmatic Institute and your host for this episode. And today we have someone with a lot of different product management experience here to talk about sort of his journey, what he's learned along the way. And spoiler alert, his current role is in the AI space. So a little bit about how that's really altered and yet not altered some of the best practices that we think about with product management. So a long way of saying welcome to Andrew Saxe, VP of Product at Smartling. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, Rebecca. Great to be here.
Excellent. Now, I know, Andrew, you've listened to the show before, so you know I am going to start by asking sort of your origin story, right? Yep. What is it that got you where you are today, and why are you just so passionate about product like all of us are?
Yeah. Do you know what? I think I've always had kind of an interest in both in technology, especially web products, of course. That's where I've always been. And just having people use something that you build. I started many years ago, and I had an internet company, and it was just really interesting to actually build something from scratch and launch it and see people using it. And I used to love to look at all the analytics and things and be like, oh, someone's looking at this website. So I sort of started as kind of a developer slash product type of person, and then throughout kind of my various roles, I've really been on just really strictly on the product side of things, but probably the little bit of I can do development, but it's dangerous and I shouldn't be doing it. And I was always developer light, but with the intention of just having things to kind of be able to build things. And I've been at Smartling for 15 years in July, I believe.
Oh, nice.
Something like that. So, so I've been at Smartling for a long time and always been in the product space at Smartling.
Nice. So, I mean, I think I also have many decades under my belt in product management and product marketing. And it is interesting sometimes to kind of step back and be like, okay, what's different than when we started? Now, we're both not so old that the web didn't exist when we started. Just to be super clear, right. Listeners. Don't be like, I wonder what they did with that. Yeah, we had it. Didn't look like it did today, but we had it. Thank you. But to think about some of the macro things that are different, and then also really some things that are very much the same. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about what you've seen in your career.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is the speed at which things happen, and from an idea, from even just not just things that are happening kind of globally and new technologies and things, but even just how quickly you can build things and get it out to customers and test things. And I remember spending at various jobs before Smartling, spending weeks and weeks or months or something building something, and then if you finally are ready to get it out to people, and now you can do it in a single day or in weeks or something versus the time frame that maybe used to exist. And I think that's really kind of the biggest thing that I have noticed as far as what's changed in product, especially.
Yeah. I know that's a really good point. The speed of change, the speed of adoption, right? Yep. Again, we're old, just deal with it, people. But there were these CDs that went out with products sometime, or you had once a year releases in a very different way. Yep. So there's speed at which we can do things, but also the speed at which it hits the market. And that's not just true in technology. I mean, the whole global, supply chain has changed so quickly that even hard goods, the speed at which we can shift and produce and get in front of people is just so much faster.
So much faster. And also I think maybe a second to that would be how much you know about people and your users and just the information that people both provide, but you can also infer. There's just so much information that you can use to build your products and target them to the right people and improve their experience and all these things that really didn't exist quite a while ago.
Oh, yeah. I mean, back in the day, you didn't have enough information and you're like, I wish I knew. And now you have almost too much, right? You're like, oh, I have so much information. I have a bit of a paralysis, right?
Totally.
And just global information about what I can pull about people in general. And then also like how they interact with my product these days is just the level of finite information I can have and things I can test are very, very different.
Very different, very different. Yeah. And I think, and also like, and like I'm in the enterprise space, and I don't know if like, I can't really remember, but like maybe like 20 years ago, was there, I guess there was always enterprise software, but maybe it was really kind of, I guess, cloud that really made enterprise markets, I don't know, like cloud computing and Salesforce and like SaaS companies and things, like really a different type of business for enterprises, rather than like installing something in your data center and like that's the product that you're buying, and you are a website, you build a website, you install it in some server somewhere, and you launch it. Like it's just a completely different world.
Well, and with that too, the SaaS environment raised the number of competitors, raised expectations, but also like it used to be, you know, you got the software you got and no, it's not going to work the way you do. You must work the way this ERP system did. Like that was the reality of the world. And you can see some of the companies that have been around a long time, legacy companies, have switched over. You don't just have to switch your technology, you have to switch your mindset, right? Like there's no way that you're just going to be like, no, you just have to work the way it does. Because you're like, no.
No, I'm not. Yeah, exactly. It's also interesting that like, you mentioned competitors, and like kind of anyone can make, I don't know, a website or a product or something that looks like it is like a true competitor. And I think that's something that even being in the space, and now we're always conscious of, there's kind of the competitors that we know, and then there could be tons of upstarts that really just take a huge bite out of your business that you're not following, because anyone can kind of have that agility and knowledge to build something.
And it is those sort of disruptor competitors too. Like we all think about the Yahoo versus Google, the taxi versus Uber. Like those are your big nightmare stories, but partly because they're true, right? I mean, well, they are true, but also like you see it more and more today because to your point, the barrier of entry is much smaller. And we see some companies leading with the technology first, which is not what, you know, you'd recommend for a long-term business plan. But sometimes what they end up with is a technology that then they find the problem, and that problem is in an unexpected industry. That's like that disruptor that comes in and you're like, oh, damn, I did not see that coming. And that's a scary place to be.
Exactly.
And it's interesting because many of these things are certainly good from a consumer perspective, and a lot of them are positive, but there are a few in those that we talked about that I also think are a little bit like pitfalls. Like we do have a crud load of information about our market and the way they interact with our product, but I sometimes think we take data as a substitution for understanding. Right?
And
especially like understanding the core foundational problems and what they're trying to accomplish. I can see what they're doing today. That doesn't necessarily mean it's what they want to do. Right. And I think that we can get over reliant on that. It's such a powerful thing. Don't ignore it, but don't forget that you still really need that context, and you can't get that from the data alone.
Definitely. And you can certainly like overanalyze data and get lost in the data when maybe like your gut is like, hey, this is the problem and we need to solve this problem. And maybe you don't need to spend 3 months analyzing data and looking at all this. Sometimes there can be obvious examples without getting lost in the data. Yeah, there can definitely be data overload.
Yes. Well, and that context is so important to really understand. And it was, you know, when you had longer cycles between when you had an idea and when the product hit the market, the requirement to have really bulletproof understanding and data to start with was really big, because anything off would just be expanded in that amount of time. So we don't have quite that today, but sometimes that means you get the companies that are like, I don't know, let's just try it. And there's a healthy side of that. And then there's an unhealthy side of that, which leads to a lot of frustration internally, right? Like we all like to see the stuff we build, you know, be used. But from a customer base too, like you're losing credibility with me and you're losing patience with me because like you're going in and out of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's super interesting. And like, I think like even thinking about like our customers now, and like you can lose a lot of credibility if you're maybe getting lost in the data, or you're not listening to your customers. Like sometimes you just need to listen to your customers, and you don't need the mounds and mountains of data that you might be trying to capture.
Yeah. And also, like, customers know what happens with other customers today, probably in a magnified way. Like
100%.
They will tell. They will know.
People will tell. People will talk.
Right. It's not just like I happened to see Bob at a trade show and he said vendor X wasn't good. Like that's not how the information chain moves, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I also think with that, there is a expectation of a certain amount of, what's the right word I'm looking for, right? Like there is a relationship that we expect to have with brands, even in the B2B space, that is a little bit different, right? Again, in the old days, I gotta stop saying that because I'm not that old, but like, you had very different expectations of your enterprise B2B software than you did of anything in the B2C world. You just did. They were two different things. They were not going to be. And really, it's merged. So I have many of the same expectations. That's about usability. That's about relationship. That's about support, right? All of that has really come together to raise my expectations of what I want from an enterprise provider.
For sure. And we talk so much about relationships with the customer, and whether it's making sure they have good support, or their tickets are getting resolved, or the product teams listening to their feedback, or just like sometimes it is like, okay, we're taking you to dinner or something. Like there's definitely relationship building across the board, and it starts from those people using the platform, support tickets, to the people buying signing the checks, I guess. And it's really across the board.
So speaking of relationships, I want to talk about how you see the internal relationships with product teams, like product teams to development, product teams to sales, product teams to even execs. How have you seen that evolve through your career?
Great question. I guess like I have been at Smartling for a while, so I've probably seen it mostly at Smartling.
Yeah, fair.
I was in a B2C company for a little while, but I've mostly been in kind of the enterprise land. I think it's always a little bit of, I guess like I would say at Smartling, it's been various stages of the business.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And maybe that's how I see it, as far as just changing over time, and that like at some point you're selling kind of anything, even if it doesn't exist yet, maybe in the early days. And
look
then
at my vaporware, yes.
Exactly. And like the salespeople kind of have kind of free reign to make sure that we can get the customers in, and product is really involved in a lot of the sales conversations, but that doesn't scale super well. So you have to, at some point, kind of rein it in and make sure that people are selling the actual product that exists. So I'd say that's kind of my, like, given that I've kind of been
changes
at the same
by like sort of lifestyle of the company.
Exactly.
And we talk about that too, like whether it's a development-led company or a market-led company or a sales-led. I was thinking about this, and I don't know that this is true. This is my hypothesis that other people are welcome to weigh in on, but I do feel like the way most SaaS products at least work today, product is more integrated. Product is the whole experience of the user before they buy the product, why they have it during. And so it becomes really important that it is more integrated, right? With a lot more functions than I think we used to think of it as in an ideal space. Now, not every company works that way, right? But if I really want to think about it, then it has to have a lot more touch points in a lot more places in the organization.
For sure. Yeah, and that's a great point. It really depends on the type of business that you're in. And like at Smartling, the product is the business, and that's what we're selling. The product is what we're selling. And I have friends who work at other places, and the product is like the product is not what they're actually selling. The product is something else, and the product is like supporting making sure the payments get through, or the TV channel turns on, or whatever it is.
Yep.
So it definitely, I think, depends on the type of business, and for sure, like SaaS companies and things like that, like product really is the kind of the center point of an organization, and work with sales and with customer success and marketing and leadership and all these different things. Really, kind of the main point.
Yeah. And I mean, it certainly has to be integrated. And I would go to your other point, depending on the lifestyle cycle of the company and some of the other market pieces, who's leading that integration can definitely vary. But I think
Definitely.
it's important that it's seen as a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I think all of these things sort of lead to the need to be very quick, right? The
Yep.
speed you talked about, the speed of which things happen also mean the speeds of which we can pivot and the speed at which we can get the right information to make the right choices to pivot.
Yep. Yeah, agreed. And I think like so much of what we hopefully try to do in product a little bit, especially when product is kind of the company's offering. Like a lot of things we're doing is inventing things. Like we're inventing things that haven't existed before, or an experience that hasn't existed before even. And I think like with that, like the center point of product is super important, and getting the right information from the various teams and whatever is really important when you're trying to create something completely new.
Yeah. So there's this one thing that's changed a lot over the last couple of years, and you may not be super familiar with it. It's called AI. No, I'm kidding. 'Cause obviously, you work with us regularly.
I haven't really heard about it.
Do you know this? But tell the audience a little bit about like your experience and your product and how it works with AI, and then let's like zoom out about what that means and how we navigate this new world.
Yeah, it's an AI, and I like sometimes I like shudder saying the word, and I wonder how many times I say that like all day.
Yeah.
But like it really has been like wildly impactful for our business. I know for tons of businesses, and it's like beyond transformative, and I think it's so interesting that like this thing that didn't really even exist. Like I guess it was this maybe 2 years ago was when OpenAI first released their kind of their models. But I guess if we're talking about AI overall, like we've been using natural language processing and machine learning and whatever for years, but this is like such a different element.
The level of accessibility
is
what shift. Yep.
Totally. And like anyone can do it and anyone can understand it. But we're still like pretty early on in it, and like we learn new things, and every day there's a new model, and every day there's a new model deprecated, and every day there's something new that we have to figure out how to learn and support. I think one thing that have found most interesting is that like customers ask for AI, even if they don't maybe know what they're asking for. It's like they want to be using this, and they want it to be impactful for them.
Completely fear of missing out, right? Like everyone else is doing it. Why do I have it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like not knowing really where it should be impactful or how or what maybe that outcome should be. But like that's already has changed so much over the last 2 years. And like it needs to save money. It needs to reduce people time. It needs to reduce manual tasks. It needs to do all these things. And like we've kind of really focused on certain parts of AI, of how we're implementing AI. And it is truly transformational for our customers.
Yeah. Nice. Well, okay. So tell me a little bit more about Smartling. And then
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Tell me more about Smartling.
Right. Yeah. So Smartling is we're an enterprise translation platform. So where we turn like English into French and French into Spanish and
CC?
Language or subtitle videos and all these different things for a lot of enterprises. And we're kind of behind the scenes, not a thing that end users interact with. They interact with kind of the end product that we help our customers produce. And it's from the largest airlines to the top 5 hotel chains to the largest automobile companies, like you kind of name it, governments. Like we're kind of the power behind getting language out to these organizations.
Nice. Okay. So obviously, if you've been there for 15 years, how did you guys used to do the translation?
Yeah. So like one of the founders of the company who I knew before and then joined soon after, and I joined soon after they kind of raised the first round of money, was like, it was super expensive. It was a black box. Often you'd have spreadsheets of content. You'd mail it out, email it to someone, and then at some point in the future, you'd get all that back. And And it was really an arduous process and super expensive. And the founder at the time had kind of, he saw how kind of ridiculous this process was, like there must be a better way to do it. And so Smartling was started to kind of open up the black box and do things in a more technology forward fashion, and reduce a lot of this like manual effort that had existed and try to push the industry towards technology.
And so has AI always been part of your secret sauce?
Not as it is today, but there's always been a little bit of, I guess, magic behind the scenes to try to like improve the process. And like, if you can imagine, like translation really is like expert linguists like typing in like translations that match the context of whatever they're translating or match a video, and it's much more difficult than that one would kind of think it would be to kind of get the right language that how people really speak. And then at the same time, it's a really big technical problem when you think about like all of this content that exists, and it's in JSON files, it's in CMSs and email applications, it's on Word documents on someone's computer, it has escaping and encoding and placeholders and all these different things that make it super complex. And you really want technology to try to centralize and improve the process of reusing content and making sure content is on brand and making sure you have terminology for your organization, it's following the right styles and all of that. So like as a product person and for product people who implement and have to deal with localization and translation at their organizations, I think they're very much like, that's super complicated. Yeah. Let's try to find a solution that will help simplify my life.
And if anybody's ever tried to just like use like the Google Translate equivalent, it doesn't work, right? I mean, again, we were recently in Spain and we were asking like what team they rooted for, and the translation like was like root like a tree. So
exactly.
Everyone like, I mean, there's just a ton of that. And then when you add on what we're talking about, was most of us are enterprise software, like the business language, the technical language, the terms that you use yourself to are really precise for a reason.
Are really precise for a reason. And you don't want something crazy to show up on your website or on your billboard or something that you have in Times Square or something. Like you want the translations to be accurate and context aware and use your brand terminology and formality and all of those things. And those are things that software is really good at doing.
So it sounds like your solution the whole time you've been there has been a more technologically advanced, right? That it used technology to help advance the translation. Yeah. Then we get AI, right? And that allows us to speed it up. How does that change though from your competition, from your market's perspective, the competition where sort of like it was technical, but it was magic that you did. Yeah. And now they're like, ooh, AI. Like, how does that change perception of what you do and the sort of competitive landscape for you?
We still we were one of the first companies, and it sounds ridiculous now, but in the translation space, we were kind of the first company in the cloud, and Smartling has had several milestones where we've pushed and changed the industry. And we think that the way we built our product and application and things is that we're always pushing the industry. So we believe that we are ahead of our competition and how we're implementing AI and the customer outcomes that we want. And when we look at competition, there has been, for a while, when you think about how translations actually get done, there's tons of agencies, there are tons of people that you hire to type in translations. And a lot of the software has really been geared to helping those types of organizations improve their process and improve the speed that they translate or something like that. Whereas we've always been focused on what the customer outcome is going to be. So in using AI, some places, and we do some of this, but some competitors or something might use AI to help a translator do the translation. And like our AI focus has so far been improving the first translation so you don't have to have a person at all. So you can skip the person entirely. So we get a translation, we make it really good, we insert glossary terms, we fix all the problems, then we estimate the quality for it and decide if it needs to go to a human or not. So our use of AI is slightly different than how maybe others might be implementing it.
But and that makes sense. And also, though, I imagine those can be difficult differentiations for the customer to understand.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
And so, now that everyone will go back and be like, well, we use AI in order to right? Like, how do you stand out then in what is a more crowded space for those who don't dig deep, right? Like the first, when they're looking at your website or when they're talking at the beginning, how do you make that difference? Because it's happening to all of us where we feel like we're very different because we do it with quality and everyone's like, but we do it with that and with AI. And you're like,
Right. For sure. And I totally agree. Kind of any organization that's going through this, like you could probably look at 10 different websites and they'll kind of look the same. So how do you differentiate it? And and we think about that constantly and trying to see how we can make sure that we're telling the story correctly. And we do tell the story of, and we can, because we have the data to prove it and we guarantee it to customers, we're guaranteeing a certain quality level of improving the speed. You'll get it back 50% faster or 100% faster than you would anywhere else. So there are certain data points that we optimize around that we think differentiate ourselves versus others.
And is that, so let's zoom out a little bit. And if you were to give advice to listeners about how to stand out in the saturated IR markets, right? Let's say you don't have that problem, right? But how should listeners think about it when everybody now is saying, we use AI how do we make it different?
Yeah. Do you know what? I think there's a couple things. One is, I think there's proof points in using AI, and both in the the data that you have and the confidence in your AI, because you can create anything in AI, and LLMs are always going to give a response, but is it the right response? So, you want to make sure that you have this confidence level in what you're delivering, that you can prove that to the customer. And I think another point is even though LLMs are kind of a black box, there's a certain point of visibility that I think people can't want to expect. And I think if you can figure out what that is and what that visibility is, you can make yourself stand out from others rather than just saying, I sent this thing to AI and it came back. And a lot of people, when you send something, and just especially in translation, when you think about translation, an organization may be translating into 100 languages or 150 languages. And there's no way that someone at an organization can say, oh, this is great quality across 150 languages. And maybe it depends on someone's business and what they're in. But when you can't actually validate that the quality of what AI is returning to you and how good of a job it's doing, then that's a business in itself to make sure that you can validate and give your customers the confidence in what your AI is doing. And if you don't have that type of visibility, then you are just another company that says, I have AI.
Yeah. Well, yes. And I think everybody's going to say, I have AI.
Everyone's going to say they have AI.
Right? Saying I have AI and it solves this problem for you. I think is really important. I don't nobody cares if it solves a problem for us internally. Right. Yay for you. But tell me how it makes me smarter, me better. I think is a key piece.
That's a huge point also. Yeah. How is it actually helping me do better at my job even? I think one thing that's interesting is that AI came out, so everyone started saying AI, and now I don't know when the word agent started happening.
It's very cool right now, though.
It's very cool right now. Everyone has an agent. There's so many agents. Everything's an agent.
Your own agent. Mm-hmm.
Your own agent. So I think staying a little bit above the hype can also be reassuring to people. And if you're going to call something an agent, then you need to, again, prove that it is actually doing something that would qualify as an agent rather than just saying it's an agent. I think overall, it's just as you're building and implementing AI, how can you prove that it is actually doing what you say it's doing?
Yeah. And I also think it's a really interesting, and I think you're right, you have to stay above the hype, but it is interesting because people do think of it as a checkbox. If you're not, well, then go away, right? If you're not thinking about it. But we don't just want you to think about it. We want you to think about it and make sure, and it's the same way we should be thinking about it from a product perspective. We should invest in AI that is solving problems.
Yeah.
And so we need to talk about the problems we're solving powered by AI.
Yeah, exactly.
Not the other way.
Yeah. And we've heard from customers where they have like an organizational mandate to use AI. And like, it's like, okay, but like, what does that mean? And sometimes it can just be a checkbox for people, but hopefully if it's the right solution or product, or as product people, we've built the right thing, that it's more than just a checkbox.
And I imagine it is interesting, going back to your, Smartling specifically, is that I would think that in that market, customers would see as like, they could easily see the speed and cost advantage of AI. But I imagine many of them have tried at some point other tools that they know didn't perform. So there would also be a fear of the bad side, right? Like, I know what happens when I get bad translations and I'm suddenly, talking cuckoo-ness, and you're like, what?
Oh, totally.
So I could see where it would be a concern for them, not to have that human element.
That is totally right. And certainly in translation, like if you're the person using Smartling or a competitor or whatever, and you get a bad Japanese translation back and it's suddenly on your website, and then your Japanese or office is like, or customers are like, wow, this is like really offensive. And now everyone's pointing at you for getting this bad Japanese translation. Like that can be really devastating for an organization and for individuals. And there is certainly that fear. And I would imagine at other organizations where they're implementing these things. I was thinking the other day, like I was using this like chatbot agent for some company, and it was like, it responded with some crazy things. And that was like not even related to like whatever I was trying to talk to them about. And like at some point there are these tools that you're using, and whoever was on the other side of that probably looked at the logs or whatever, and probably was like, oh, and they had some fear that their AI is maybe not performing as they expected. Yeah.
I mean, it is interesting because you can only do so much QA testing, right? And we've all seen some of the bots are amazing. I'm like, oh, you were so much less painful than something else, right? Like this was amazing. And then others are like, and it's this. I mean, I think we all see that with the tools, and they get smarter every time. The only problem with getting smarter is it's harder to sometimes see where it made stuff up. Before you're like, that's dumb. And right. no one's believed. No.
Yeah. So we often advise our customers, like, we do so much research and so much testing of different models and prompts and all these types of things. And we're like, well, it's not quite, we don't have the confidence in this particular feature using AI today, but like tomorrow it could be completely different. And it's really about having that confidence level. And as you said, it gets better and better every day.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. We talked about all kinds of different things today.
All kinds of things.
All things. All fun things. If you were going to have listeners do 2 things differently tomorrow based on what we talked about today, what would it be?
You know what? I think like if I was just a product person doing something, I would use tools to do use AI tools to do prototyping. And if you're not using even like Figma AI or just a chatbot AI thing to like create easy prototypes for people to use. If you're not doing that yet, then you should do that tomorrow. And I think like really having an understanding of all the different terminologies that get used with AI. And there's so many different words that get used, but we were talking about agents, and then there's agentic, and there's all these different things. And like, there's a lot of different definitions. I think using them correctly and educating yourself and educating others and the rest of your team is important, because these things are really changing every day and are super impactful.
Yeah. So set some time to play with them.
Yeah.
To experiment, exactly. I think is a good one.
Yeah.
All right, Alex, Andrew, sorry, I'm renaming you. The AI has renamed you. I don't know.
It hallucinated. The AI hallucinated.
It's my own hallucination. Sorry. Andrew, this was great. If people wanted to learn more from you, follow along with your career, where should I send them?
You can find me on LinkedIn, of course. Probably find me through Smartling. on LinkedIn, also on the Smartling website.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right. That does it for today's episode. Thank you everyone for listening. And don't forget to join us next week when we tackle another great topic designed to help you elevate your product, your company, and your career.